coming on the air with breaking news and what appears to be a major escalation in the Middle East tonight. Iranian state TV is reporting there have been explosions on targets in Tehran. It comes just weeks after Iran launched a direct missile attack on Israel. This escalation comes amid growing concerns about a wider all-out war breaking in the region. I want to bring in our Pentagon correspondent, Courtney Kube. Courtney, what are you hearing from there?
Yeah, so this is something that we've been waiting for several weeks now, and this is an Israeli military response to the large-scale attack by Iran several weeks ago on Israel. Now, Iran on that night launched nearly 200 ballistic missiles towards Israel, several of them striking. Fortunately, the majority of them were able to be intercepted by the Israeli military with some help from the U.S. military. But since then, we have been hearing from U.S. and Israeli officials that a response was coming. Well, that seems to be what is now underway. The Israeli Defense Forces now confirming that they are conducting precision strikes against Iran. Now, in a statement from the IDF, they are saying this is not only in response to that attack several weeks ago by Iran, but this is in a response or retaliation for the dozens and dozens of attacks that they say they have been suffering from Iran and Iranian proxies since October 7th. Now, of course, we have now seen several cases where Israel and Iran have launched projectiles, missiles, drones, and other projectiles and weapons back and forth between one another. Back in April, we saw hundreds of projectiles fly from Iran towards Israel. Again, in that case, the vast majority were knocked down. Israel responding with several strikes up towards Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, that seemed to end the direct back and forth between Iran and Israel, and instead, in those months between April and now, we saw the majority of the attacks came through those proxy networks. So we're talking about Hezbollah from Iran, Hezbollah in Iraq and in Syria, and then, of course, the Houthi rebels in Yemen. But then in July, after a series of Israeli assassinations, the back and forth started again. And then, of course, when Israel assassinated Hassan Nasrallah, it all ticked up again. So the big question here is, Lester, what is Israel targeting tonight? Now, U.S. officials have told us that they expect the majority of the targeting to be against Iranian military sites. But, of course, there is always the possibility that Israel could also go after some of Iran's energy facilities. So things like their oil and gas fields, the sorts of targets that would not necessarily be military related, but could have a direct impact on Iran's economy. It still stands to reason we have to see exactly what they're targeting tonight. But according to U.S. officials, who I will say we have been asking about this every single day since Iran fired off those ballistic missiles against Israel several weeks ago, we have been asking, and we keep hearing one consistent thing. The expectation is Israel will respond, they will retaliate, and they will go after Iranian military targets, Lester.
Courtney, the U.S., as you recall, used some of its interceptors to take down some of those Iranian missiles that hit Israel a couple of weeks ago. Do we know if there's an American involvement tonight?
We don't. So as of now, that does not look to be the case, but this is all really developing quickly here. Now, the U.S. has not only maintained that presence of air defense systems, most of those coming from the maritime several weeks ago. So this was the U.S. Navy firing off interceptors from some of their ships in the Mediterranean to stop some of those incoming Iranian ballistic missiles. But since that time, the U.S. has added another very powerful capability in the form of a THAAD air defense system. Now, that moved into Israel over the course of about 2 weeks. The interceptors are there. The reason that these are so critical to Israel's defense right now, Lester, is because they target an incoming projectile, in most cases a missile, in the terminal phase of its firing. So that's as it is literally heading straight in the last moments before a missile will impact in Israel. The THAAD will launch off and fire it off. It's what the military calls a kinetic kill vehicle. That means it's an interceptor that fires up. It doesn't have a warhead on it. It literally slams into an incoming missile, and then it causes the missile to essentially blow itself up with just that kinetic force. The U.S. has moved that THAAD interceptor, the battery, into Israel so that should, in fact, if this becomes another tit for tat in the coming hours or even days, Israel will have even more air defense systems in place for for a possible Iranian response here.
All right, Courtney, we'll ask you to stand by. For those just joining us, we're following events right now in Iran where explosions have been reported, according to state TV there, widely thought to be part of a retaliation by Israel against Iran. I want to go to Matt Bradley now. He's in Beirut. What is the anticipation of what comes next in Lebanon?
Yeah, I mean, all of this is about anticipation, right, Lester? I mean, the fact is that we're talking about Israeli attacks against Iran, and this is when we talk about this IDF statement, they're talking about Iran's proxies, and that is one of the main proxies that is here in Lebanon, Hezbollah, and the Israelis have expanded their front against Hezbollah here for the past month. They've been relentlessly attacking Hezbollah targets here, and the question is whether or not these attacks by Israel against Iran are going to metastasize to encompass the entire region, and whether or not this is going to really work into an entire region-wide war. And that is the real concern here. That's one of the things that American diplomats have been working so hard over the past several weeks to try to avoid, to try to get the entire region to step down from a region-wide war. Now, they've been trying to tell the Israelis to try to stop from, making this into a region-wide war. But the fact is that the main cat's paw of the Iranians is here in Lebanon. And this is why the Israelis have been launching a ground invasion of Lebanon, and that has been, obviously killing so many people in this region, especially here in Lebanon. And so we're trying to see whether or not this is going to be a war that is going to be worked through the Iranians themselves, or whether or not this is going to be more of a symbolic attack, as we saw back in April, when there was more of a tit-for-tat between the Iranians and the Israelis, and both sides were able to climb down with kind of a face-saving maneuver, whether there was more of a symbolic attack. This is now going to be a question of whether or not proxy groups here in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, as we heard from Courtney Kubi, in Yemen and other places throughout the Middle East, are going to now be engaged in fighting against the Israelis. That is going to determine where this war goes from here. Lester?
And Matt, whether we call this the wider war or not, the fact is that Israel is fighting right now on three fronts: in Gaza, in Beirut, and now this attack, which may be limited, but nonetheless it is a third front for Israel.
Yeah, this is the third front. The Israelis, in their statement today, called this the seventh front. I mean, they've been calling this, they've been saying that they've been fighting on 7 fronts. This is really the main front here. Well, when we talk about what the Iranians are doing against the Israelis, they have different groups, what they call the axis of resistance. Now, the axis of resistance is Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah here in Lebanon, they have the Houthis in Yemen, and you can also say that they have the regime of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. This is something that could really metastasize into a much wider war. And that's why we've been seeing this flurry of diplomacy throughout the entire region for the past several weeks, trying, as we've seen from several visits from diplomats from the United States and really throughout the world, trying to get everybody to back down. But it really is a question of whether or not this war by the Israelis is going to be actually escalating the situation or causing everybody to, kind of take a face-saving step back. And that is what we're waiting to see.
All right, Matt Bradley, we'll ask you to stand by there in Beirut as we try to put the pieces together, what we know. I want to go back to the Pentagon, our correspondent Courtney Kubi. Courtney, there was a leak of a U.S. leak of Israeli intelligence data about how they would conduct a retaliatory strike. Do we know, has that altered what they might be doing, or how has it played a role in all this?
So U.S. officials have said that hasn't had any real impact on the situation here. And what's critical about those documents, Lester, is they not only showed how the IDF, the Israeli military, is postured for a possible response to Iran, but they also showed the offensive and the defensive posture. So what was really important about those documents is they showed this sort of holistic look at how the Israeli military was readying for this back and forth with Iran. Now, We are learning a little bit more as this develops. At this point, there is no indication that the U.S. military was involved in this in any way, but that's one of the big questions we have. Again, we're still trying to figure out what the targets were here, Lester.
All right, Courtney Kuby, again, we're watching this activity in Iran tonight. Explosions reported, likely a retaliatory strike by Israel. That concludes this NBC News special report. Much more ahead on our streaming network, NBC News Now, online at NBCnews.com. And tonight on NBC Nightly News, I'm Lester Holt in New York. Thank you for watching and good evening. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.